bite the dust. My Lord.
Good evening and welcome to Plain Talk. My name is Christopher Ram. Thank you for joining us this evening. For the next hour, you will recall at the end of the last program we indicated that we would have a part 2 to this discussion, conversation with former finance minister. The former finance minister has kept his word. He's here with us this evening, and we will spend the next hour or so to discuss matters directly affecting his ministry, and that is the question of financing and finance. So, Mr. Winston Jordan, I'd like to welcome you back to Plain Talk. Thank you so much for coming again.
Thank you, Chris, and good night to you and your viewers.
I had a look. We discussed a lot of issues last week, which generated some quite some interest, which was quite agreeable. I was looking at some economic growth statistics. You know, ministers of finance love to discuss. You know, the average person may not see the relevance of some of these numbers, but they must be very relevant. If the economy doesn't grow, it's hard to get a bigger share of any pie.
True.
I was looking at the growth rates between 2011 and 2014, the years 2011 2014, which were the full years of the Ramatar administration. I then looked at 15 to 19, the years of the Granger administration. You were in the latter years, 15 to 19. I selected the growth figures as stated in the budget speeches. It showed that for the average, and this is, you know, you economists have a way of measuring. These are not annualized, but this is year by year. The growth rate, 2011 to 2014, average 14.80%.
14?
Sorry, thank you very much. 4.80%. This is pre-oil. This is pre-oil. Post 2014, that's 2015 to 2019. The elections were in 2015. President David Granger assumed the presidency in May. It was 3.46%. Looking at these figures suggests to me that your performance as finance minister did not stack up well against the 4 preceding years. What would be your response to that?
Well, I mean, on the surface, I'm looking at the figures as you put them out. That might be one of several conclusions. But I know the figures that you've quoted are indeed the figures that have been taken from the budget.
Yes.
But those figures have now been revised as a result of the rebasing of the economy. And for your viewers, the economy had to be rebased because there are a large number of activities that have been taking place in the economy that had not been captured because we were using an old base. So the economy has been rebased. I think 2012, if I'm not mistaken, is 2010 or 2012 is the new base. And as a result of the rebasing of the economy, I have new growth rates which you could then compare. I don't have from 2011, but from 2012.
Let me say this. I think it's important for viewers to know this.
Yes.
We did not collaborate on these numbers.
No.
This is very interesting.
Yes, we didn't collaborate, but I think essentially, if you're going to speak economics, you must speak growth rates.
Okay, good.
You must speak growth rates.
I'm not an economist. You're an economist.
And so, but I didn't work with 2011. But from 2012, the growth rate, the new growth rate for 2012 was 5.3%. 2013, 5.0%. 2014, 3.9%. All right. So from 2012 to 2014, you can see there's the beginnings of a decline in the economy.
Yes. That's correct.
2015,
Would that apply to your rebase numbers?
yes, I'm saying the 2012 was 5.3%, 2013 5.0%, and 2014 3.9%. Good. So there had been.
That's the trend before the rebasing as well, based on
Oh.
the budget speeches
Okay.
as well.
In 2015, the growth rate was 3.1%, 2016 3.4%, 2017 2.1%, 2018 4.4%, and 2019 5.2%. So when you look, if you took the 3 years 2012 to 2014, I'm sorry I don't have the other year, and you
That's
did
fine. That's fine.
and you average that out, you will get 14.2 divided by 3 roughly is about 3 4s 12 and 2 4 point something percent. And if you took the 5 years here, you will get 4 10 12 8 9 13 18 18.2 divided by 5 5 3 15
3.6,
roughly 3.6 3.7, right? So there's definitely the previous 3 years were better than the next 5 on average.
On the basis of trend,
On the
although
basis-
the figures are different, on the
Yes.
basis of trend,
Yes.
these figures are not inconsistent with those.
No, they're in terms of the trend. So, okay. So now explanations. When you look at the years 2011, 2014, what was favorable to the government there? I think the viewers must understand that Guyana's economy really depends on 1 or 2 products. For years, this has been the case. It depends on what we call a lead sector, and the rest are pulled up by that lead sector. For many years, that lead sector was bauxite, especially calcined bauxite. But then sugar.
What would that pull up? Calcined bauxite, essentially produced for export.
Yeah, no. I said largely the lead sector would normally pull up.
Yes.
Look, for example, if you got a calcined bauxite, you got a good market. Foreign exchange earnings are tremendous. You can expansion the economy.
Good. Okay.
And so on. Sugar selling in the European market at a relatively high premium price. If you have a good production, because you have a maximum quota in the EU at that time, 167,000 tons, I think it was, or 63,000 tons, and you had a price that you could deal with and so on. And then, of course, during the same period, you had rice. Rice had done stellar in the period 2011 to 2014, largely because of the Venezuelan market. Rice was going through the roof in terms of production, and they were getting fantastic prices out of the Venezuelan market. And also gold. Gold prices were reasonably high, and you were getting significant production, particularly artisanal level. When we came in from 2015, we inherited certain things. In the case of sugar fell through the roof. Sugar produced from 2015 onwards was nowhere near sugar that was produced in the previous period. Rice was good, but then after the Venezuelan abrogated the contract, rice production declined significantly. And we had to go and find new markets in Panama and Mexico and Cuba, and all this was taking time. But rice is a very hardy crop, and the farmers are pretty good. Rice rebounded in the latter years, coming down from 2017 to 2019. A big negative in this period here was gold prices. Gold prices weren't very good. In fact, at one time, gold prices were so low, it threatened our foreign exchange earnings, because we were getting, our earnings were mostly from the gold, right? So gold, if you check in this period here, gold, artisanal gold wasn't doing too well because of the prices, and the 2 key corporations, foreign corporations that we had in the gold sector, started out well, but then a number of them had problems, whether with the mine or the quality of the ore and all these kinds of things. There were different problems there. So it is not that the economy wasn't well managed. It's a question of the vagaries of the environment, both domestic and foreign, as it relates to the monocrop type of economy that we have. But again, as I said, it's not how well you do when things are going good, how well you manage when things are going good. Your test is really how well you do when you are facing mounting challenges that we face in particular. When
and that's true in all walks of life, all
yes,
walks of management.
Definitely. But I mean, you probably will look good if you don't have the kind of challenges that we would have had. Take, for example, as I said, sugar. Sugar was still at that time was still counted as a main part of the economy. And sugar, if sugar sneezed, our economy used to be catching cold. And you could see the figures. Whenever sugar do well, the economy did well. Whenever sugar did badly, the economy did badly. That is how our economy was wrapped up in sugar. But when we're talking about badly, we were talking about maybe sugar declined by, say, maybe 5% or 6%. But when sugar started declining by 20-something%.
Are you talking prices here, or are you talking quantity, or both?
Well, no, GDP is goods and services produced in the economy in a defined period, for example, a year. So
Yes.
we're talking here production, right, from the production standpoint.
Okay,
Right?
good.
I mean, the bottom just fell out of sugar. And so there was no, at that particular point in time, there was nothing to fill that void that sugar had left. I mean, you're talking, to example, today, where you're struggling to produce 50,000 tons of sugar. 50 to 60,000 tons of sugar. And in those days, we were assuming that sugar will make, say, 110,000. Then targets go down to maybe 100,000. Then targets go down to 90,000. And in all of these situations, sugar weren't even making these targets. And if you look today, the target for sugar, I believe, is about 70,000 or something like that. And they will not make the 70,000. They will not make the 70,000. And that will have an effect on the non-oil growth in the economy in 2021.
Persons might say, and I don't want to go off too much on this. Persons might say that the Granger-led administration, or the Granger administration, may have contributed to the demise of sugar. Is that a fair statement, Winston?
No, it's not a fair statement. It cannot be a fair statement. Up to 2017, when just before the actions were taken to close, sugar was struggling to make 100,000 tons. So you had 15,000 workers, or how many, struggling to produce 100,000 tons. I mean,
That's less than 7 tons.
That's what I'm saying. Try as you might. Where in the world? Try as you might. You have nearly 15,000 workers struggling to produce 100,000 tons. I mean, you check the record, you will see, I think the last time, by the time we came out, sugar had made 92 or 89,000 tons of sugar. I mean, that is the reality. So we weren't responsible for pulling on sugar. When you check this here, when you check the history of the sugar over the last decade or decade and a half and so, you are going to see, with the exception of a year or two, consistent decline.
Decline, yes.
In sugar.
Is there a future for sugar in Guyana, in your view?
Well, not in my view. And I believe, notwithstanding all that is being done today, as soon as the economy take off, I think there are going to be moves to maybe not necessarily get out sugar, but the attention that is being paid to sugar today, I'm sure it's going to decline.
You think it will be a victim of the Dutch disease?
It eventually will be a victim of the Dutch disease. It will be. It will be, because I don't think sugar will be able to pay, for example, the type of wages that the oil and oil-related industries can pay. I don't think by the time you have shore bases and all these different other investment being put in places like Berbice and West Demerara and so on, that they're going to have significant labor shortages. And unless we import labor, and I don't know where from, but unless it's Haiti, which seems very unlikely, you're going to have problems in the sugar industry.
Venezuela?
Doubt whether, but
but,
most,
there is some unplanned inward migration from Venezuela.
which is bad anyhow. But yes, but I don't know whether those who have been spoiled with oil are prepared to, as for example the Venezuelans, are prepared to go and cut cane. I don't know. I doubt whether. I doubt whether. You know, Haitians maybe, because they are still accustomed to cutting cane. A lot of them go across the Dominican Republic, you know, to
Yes,
get labor
yes.
and so on. So I mean, they are very versed, very productive, and so on. And given our
Politics?
politics, it
I was
doesn't
about to
seem
ask you, is there a political component
Yes, there is.
to
There is.
importing Haitians to?
There is, and you know, you brought up a good point, because it's still in economics. So we're not deviating. It's this whole issue about labor, as you rightly called us now, involuntary Venezuelans.
Mhm.
All right, for whatever it's worth, even if the Venezuelan situation were to change tomorrow, you will still be with this situation maybe for another 3-5 years.
Yes.
If it were to change tomorrow, and as the more and more as they put down roots here, it's the more and more some of them will treat Guyana now as their station, which is in a sense unfortunate, because to me that's unplanned migration,
Mhm, mhm.
unplanned migration.
We don't have a migration problem.
But
an
this is what
immigration
I'm moving
policy.
towards. That I don't know why we're stepping away from having a migration problem or immigration problem.
Well, if we're going to have an oil production policy, other than drill, baby, drill, what else we not going to have?
But these things are going to come back to haunt us, because although it's what, as you well know, going to be unplanned development. As what happened, and you could see what happened to Parfait Harmonies, the
Plastic
diamonds
City.
and all these things, unplanned development, and now you're trying to put in things that should have been planned before, but you're having problems now to even find a bypass road to think one road going into Parfait and all these things. So you have those kinds of problems when you're not planning the development, and part of the planning that you have to do is labor. We are significantly short of labor, but I don't think we are addressing it, and politically we seem to be shying away from it.
Well, prior to the elections, the leader, the presidential candidate for the PPP, and in fact the manifesto talked about creating 50,000 jobs. Realistic? Will we have those people?
Well, first of all, 50,000 jobs they never indicated what kind of jobs, whether permanent or temporary, or the combination of permanent and temporary. Most people would want to see, when you talk about creating 50,000 jobs, we're talking about 50,000 permanent
Sustainable jobs, yes.
Sustainable jobs. And so I don't know where that is concerned. If you have 10 hotels building, you may have, within that space of time, you may have 30,000 temporary workers, construction and all these kind of things. And you could say, well, I produce 50,000 jobs. Secondly, I don't know what is the areas that they're talking about that we are going to produce these 50,000 jobs. A lot of the jobs seem to be going to be in the oil or oil related, or manufacturing related. I don't know whether our educational system is being geared to those medium to high end jobs. Because even in Trinidad had to import labor from Guyana. Not officially, but the large
The
numbers of
usual
people
involuntary thing,
who went to Trinidad,
unplanned stuff,
right,
yes.
from Guyana and other territories and so forth. That's how they overcome their labor problem. But we perhaps going to end up being the same thing. But I doubt whether in this first 5 years, which is a period of supposed to be planning for a takeoff, as opposed to takeoff, whether you will be able to create 50,000 permanent jobs. I doubt it.
And the question is whether you will have 50,000 as well.
That's what I'm saying. And the second thing is whether you'll have 50,000 Guyanese of the caliber that you're looking for. Because look, already, when you look at the housing, right, a lot of housing, house lots are being given out. They said a lot of people starting to build hotels and so forth. Then some high-end housing, Exxon and whoever else building their own. They require skilled labor and semi-skilled labor. They don't have that. I mean, Exxon and those people aren't going to take somebody who's torn up and say, well, I'm a plumber. They're looking for somebody who's qualified, you know, and all this kinds of story. So you have these issues even right now as you attempt to build a house. You can't even find 5 carpenters who will permanently be on your lot. Permanently be on your lot to help you build your house. They come today, 2 days maybe, and then they're missing. They're building somebody else's house.
Yeah.
So you have that labor shortage
And
that is going on, right? You have that labor shortage going on, but while we preach it, we don't practice it. You know, we still don't give attention
and we don't
to
want,
skills.
we don't seem to want to admit it.
Well,
We all, you know, at a personal level, even ministers. I remember ministers asking me, "Chris, you can't find a gardener for me." And this is in the time of the closure of estates and so on.
well,
We're not doing it.
I get my tail bust by a certain labor leader because I went public and said, listen, there's money to be made, for example, in grass cutting. And I said, I had somebody who I thought I could rely on to
Yeah.
cut my grass every 2 weeks.
Yeah.
But I'm chasing this man every 2 weeks trying to find him, and I can't find him. Okay? And he will charge maybe $1,000 just to cut. I only got a very little grass thing, not no big thing. But $1,000, and he's not picking up any grass.
Mm-hmm.
Now a Haitian comes, he's charging $800. And he's there beating on my door literally every other day.
Mm.
So they say how, and this foolishness was picked up even by the opposition leader.
Yeah.
They say how I am treating Guyanese something and I want to give away Guyanese job and undervalue Guyanese work. And I mean,
It's a market. It's a market. Winston, incidentally, that type of dichotomy exists in the United States as well. You
Yes.
get the, you know, the
Yes.
Mexicans. They're
Yes.
gonna come there with their cotton, whatever,
Yes.
in the back of a pickup.
But Chris, don't go to America, go to the CARICOM. When Guyanese went to Barbados or Trinidad or Antigua or St. Kitts or St. Lucia and so on, did they go there and pick up high-end jobs? They went there and
That's
did
right.
jobs that the natives didn't want to do.
That's how it goes.
And that's how it goes, you know.
I want to ask you another thing. We can come down to Dutch disease and so on, but because you have a master's degree from Warwick University.
Yeah.
Yes. I was speaking to a professor the other day, and he said, "Well, you know, Winston is a product of Warwick University."
Right, correct. My thesis supervisor was Lord Nicholas Thorne.
Wow.
Yep.
That's the
Yes.
environment man, isn't
That's
it?
correct. We met him, myself and President Granger met him in Morocco
Mhm.
at the environmental summit.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I went to him and he said, yeah, I remember you, because only black person in the class. So I remember you, right?
I know that you said it sort of voce, yes.
I remember you. Yes, Mr. Jordan. Yes. And in fact, I got a picture with him. Introduced him to the president and so on. Yes, Lord Nicholas Thorne was my thesis supervisor.
Economics.
Yes.
Does Guyana have the absorptive capacity? We touched on it just now on labor,
Yes.
but I'm talking a broader
Broader
economic
sense.
framework to engage in this kind of thing that ExxonMobil is leading our government into, or our government is leading Exxon into?
Yeah,
Do
well,
we really have the
No,
capacity?
we don't.
From an
And-
economic, from a technical perspective, forget the politics.
Yeah. No. We don't. And unfortunately, again, as I said, we do not have a plan to build that capacity. You know, what we are appearing to hear from time to time is some ad hoc things being put in place. But even there, when you hear about those plans, there seems to be a reluctance. There don't seem to be any haste in getting them in place. I mean, take for example in a year that has passed, the only piece of petroleum legislation that you have got is the one you had last week or the week before.
I can't believe that, you know.
You understand? I mean, you have got a legislative agenda that talks about child adoption, talks about birth certificate, talks about any other thing except oil and gas capacity building.
And you know what was frustrating?
You know, and Chris, I don't want, I'm bringing any politics or anything in this. This is an industry that, for all intents and purposes, will be there for another 20, 25 years, whatever.
Probably between 2016 is going to last till 2056.
Good.
So you're talking 30-something years.
30-something years, okay? If sugar, if the people Bukotate and all them had done the same thing about sugar, sugar would never have lasted.
Yeah.
And they will never be able to get the cream from the sugar or the sweet from the sugar. And what, unfortunately, look, the contract, for all intents and purposes, are given. Okay, we could speak about trying to get it renegotiated and so on, that is fine. But you have something in front of you there. So the thing that has to happen now is that in the context of the contract that you have now, even as you're attempting to renegotiate or get a better deal, is to try to make certain that what is in there.
Absolutely, you must.
You understand? And the first thing is to make certain you're not being cheated out there. Out there.
Out there meaning
yes,
where the drilling, where the production
is taking place, and
yes,
where all the pumping is taken on, all kind
yeah,
of thing. Now, it is not sufficient to say, well, I got 10 people out there, and they've been given a crash course. This is a highly technical area. You don't know the ins and outs. You know, it's starting out for us to be putting rangers on a timber concession that is owned by a multinational or by some local Guyanese, and you're eating their food and everything else. I mean, you're not selling food out there on the FPSO for your people.
You got to depend on those
You got
people
to depend on
providing
those
food
people.
and transportation
And transportation and everything else.
and an occasional telephone call and so on.
That's what I'm saying. So, but you can't just say, well, you give them a crash course, a 2-week or a 3-week or a 4-week crash course, engaging and all these different things, and they're out there and no, that might be what you have to do initially. But at the same time also, there be skilled Guyanese in these areas, or skilled CARICOM people for the time being, until you can get your people to make certain that you're getting every drop that is due to you, and to make certain that those people out there are getting what is due to them and nothing more.
Mm-hmm.
Because you have to make certain that as quickly as possible you can pare down this ratio that we have in place of 75-25.
You said last week, and that attracted some press attention. You touched on the contract, particularly the so-called signing bonus. You know, you had a quintet plus one. You weren't in the quintet.
Yes, I was in
You
the
were
quintet plus one, yes. The quintet was myself,
Dominic Gaskin,
David Patterson, Joe Harmon, Chatman,
yes,
and the plus one was Mangal.
Mangal, that's
Mhm.
right.
Mhm.
Do you think we erred
In
that contract?
well,
I don't want to spend too much time on it, but I
no,
just wanted to get your view.
Look, hindsight is 2020, and there are things if we had a chance again to do, perhaps we would do differently, and perhaps even better. Also, I believe if we had the benefit of more expertise, like maybe a highly trained team that knew about the oil industry and knew about the ins and outs of these different little pieces, yes, we will have a better deal. I agree with that. On the other hand, let us understand exactly where these negotiations, in the context and the environment within which these negotiations took place. There was a haste to get a major on the shelf, and that major was ExxonMobil.
What year are we talking about there?
We're talking about 2015.
No, but they were already there. They were under 1999 agreement.
No, but they were there drilling.
Yes.
Okay. No, not the last time, but I remembered as a young person just graduated from UG, working at state planning. And one day...
Oh, yeah, you said that story about
one day we were
find
jumping
oil.
up and we find oil.
Yes.
Right? And then about 2 days afterwards, everybody faced long. The men carved the thing and then went back. You understand? No, the point is, yes, they were there drilling for oil. If you couldn't get, and you were talking also here, where Venezuela, as soon as the government changed in 2015, Venezuela took an onslaught to the new government.
Mm-hmm.
Right? We have to divert significant resources to mount a diplomatic offensive on that front. Can you imagine having to do with this saber rattling? Having to do with a situation where you're defenseless and powerless. Because look, if Venezuela walk into Guyana, with all the noise that everybody making, who's going to push them out back?
Nobody.
Nobody's going to push them.
I don't want to get involved in the contract because there are lots of problems. That Clyde and Company report
Yes.
was a damning indictment.
I agree. Look, I agree, but I said negotiations have context, they have environment, and they have players. And players got hands. And who got the strongest hands or who could bluff the best will come out the winners.
Yes. All right.
Look, even up to today, we don't have the technology to tell us what we have down there. We are relying on what Exxon tells us.
Mm-hmm.
So if Exxon says, well, all this fancy language when they get a new find, I don't know if you understand it, but it's all something with depths with so much sand and all kind of story.
Yeah.
And then long afterward they come and say, well, it got maybe $500 million.
Yes.
We don't know. We don't have a clue.
But is it because
what is there?
But we're not trying to learn either?
But that's what I'm saying. We just talk about the absorptive capacity
Yes.
story.
I want to get back there.
Right.
Now, when an economist talks about, and we are not going to stop talking about this contract because this contract smells.
Mm.
But you're an economist and let's talk economics. What do we mean when we say the country does not have the absorptive capacity for the kind of production that we are encouraging? Exxon, we see the Vice President saying in Texas, look, let's go, let's drill.
Well, again,
Now, that's an economist, you're an economist.
Yes.
What's your response to that, Winston?
Look, I could understand that on his side, he's suggesting, look, there is some notion out there based on climate change and so on that suggests that fossil fuels is coming under attack, and the time is nigh or soon nigh when the demand for fossil fuel will drop so sharply as to affect the prices and so on.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So if we have people who are already there drilling and are going to be there for a while, let us exploit to the fullest so that we can monetize that resource and use the money for development and other purposes. I understand, I could understand that argument, right? It's a very persuasive argument for people who are generally poor and who are being sold these expectations of not only a better life, but a life akin to Dubai and all these different things that we were talking about. It's a very persuasive argument. And to the extent that you could get people with the investment to come now and drill and take out the that is fine.
Dubai
The
never had
problem-
the kind of agreement that we got.
Well, no.
Exactly.
No.
So we ain't gonna. That's a dream. That's an impossible dream.
No, but I
that we're
think-
gonna be a Dubai.
I think what he is spouting is not a first-best solution. It's a second or third-best solution. Look, we're in this thing already. We have a player out there in a 600 whatever acres and so forth, we already assured about 9 billion, and we can leverage what that player has already shown so that others could come now and so that we could get, in a sense, what we were robbed
But
in to get from somebody else.
Do we have the absorptive
No, we
capacity
don't. We
from an
don't.
economic point of view?
No, we-
And if we don't, what are the consequences of not having the capacity?
Well, I won't want to deal with consequences first. I want to deal with the recognition that we don't have it.
Well, that's why I'm
And
saying
then,
the next thing.
then
Yes.
move
Yes.
with post haste, right? To get it, to get that absorptive, particularly what we're talking about here is technical know-how, human resource, and so on that will build capacity. So let's get that.
Including regulatory.
Yes, everything. everything, the regulatory, everything.
Literally everything.
That's what. But look, what I'm saying, Chris, is look. All you need, after all the spouting and the shouting, is show me the plan in all of these areas, whether it's regulatory, technical, human, these different things, and what is the timetable? Take this gold program you got.
Mm-hmm.
How many people are studying petroleum in the gold program? How many scholarships you see there in the gold program for petroleum of any kind? Of any kind. You got 400 people doing cake, decoration, and some other thing in 2 week and 1 week courses.
Mm-hmm.
No, I'm not saying cake decoration and so on are not important. But what when I started out this program today, I indicated to you there's something wrong with the approach of the government in not moving aggressively to tackle the issues in the petroleum sector. Something is wrong, and I think they need more civic engagement to push this agenda seriously.
But Winston, minister, former minister, and you know the honorific is you still refer to
Yes.
people. In the US they still say Secretary Clinton.
Thanks, Liz.
Yes. The fact is, it's not only the PPP. The APNU government did not
Yes.
amend any legislation other than the Natural Resource Fund.
And
You
don't
had
forget,
no petroleum legislation.
yes, but don't forget we had the Petroleum Commission bill since 2016
Yes.
in the Parliament,
Mm.
and it went to select
Select
committee,
committee.
and it died there.
Why did it die?
Look, Chris.
Why did
the-
you push it? Why did I'm going to say you mean the Granger administration.
Look, a select committee comprises, I think, 5 government and 4 opposition. For a quorum, you require certain people. The opposition won't come into the meetings.
That's the PPP.
Yes, at
the time. Yes.
Won't come into the meetings. Okay, and therefore it was difficult to get that Petroleum Commission bill going. As indeed, there were a number of other bills in the select committee. If you want to kill a bill, send it to the select committee, as what they have done with the ganja bill or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But they refused to carry the board certificate bill to a select committee that has widespread implications for this country.
Mm-hmm.
Look, the Petroleum Commission bill that was introduced bore striking resemblance to many of the semi-autonomous agencies that we have in this country. It was patterned after that. And if you check many of the semi-autonomous agencies, the minister has wide powers in those laws. Now people said, listen, that is, we understand that, but we don't want it for the petroleum sector. We don't want the powers of the minister being this and the different other things. So let me send it to a select committee. Okay. And that will also give the opportunity for private sector and civil society and whoever else to make representation and take the bill. But 3 years afterwards, the bill died.
But
So it's not a case. It's not a case where it wasn't tried. Yeah, at least 2 pieces of legislation were
The
tried.
NRF?
The NRF and the Petroleum Commission. The other areas we didn't have the capacity, so we had to wait. And this is when you pour. This is what happens. We had to wait on a big loan from the World Bank. Technical assistance loan, technical assistance credit, about 20 million. And that only got signed in 2019. 2019 March, I think I signed it in Washington. To help us with local content, regulation, environment, and all these different aspects. You know? And then also to bring in exports in some areas and pay them, because a lot of people say, oh, you know, Guyanese are acting in these, but Guyanese, not a number of the people we talked to at least weren't willing to come unless they were being paid. You understand? So sometimes we talk and so on, but people are seeing an opportunity, and they don't want to leave what they have, knowing that they are not going to benefit substantially. For them, this is not gratis work or benevolence,
patriotism,
or altruism, and so on.
Yeah.
So all of those you have to look at.
Winston, you as minister came in for a lot of flack
Yes.
on this multitude of duty-free concessions. Why did you allow the ballooning of duty-free concessions?
Well, no, I didn't allow any balloon of duty-free concession. If you check the budget speech, you will note that in 1 year the concession actually came down. If you check, I checked it up to this morning
Sure.
because I know you would have asked about it. It actually came down, but when it started going back up is when
Did
there
it?
was a ramping up of investments in the
oil
oil sector.
Yes.
You know, but if you check the other areas outside of that, there was no big increase in listen to this, I will tell you honestly, and you know, from the day I came in as minister, I engaged yourself, Stacia, and Odell, and so in
Dr. Thomas Singh, that's
and
correct.
Thomas Singh in putting together, examining all those taxes and so on.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And we were moving to the stage where duty-free concessions not necessarily would have been a thing of the past, but we were going to do more in terms of credit.
Yes.
I think
yes.
one of the big issues was the liquidity implications.
Yes. Yes.
Okay? But we had started that, I think, in my 2019 budget. I had offered credit, for example, to those who said electricity was a factor in their exports.
Mm-hmm.
So we said, okay, if you show me that, we will give you it as a tax
Yeah,
credit
yeah.
and so on. So it's not that. Look, compared to what we had put in place, we were following reforms that we had gone through with yourself. What were in the Juke report?
Yes.
And
the
what
Juke
was in the
report
IMF
came out from
before
Donald
Ramatar,
That's correct.
and
That's
IMF.
correct.
Tell me what is being followed today. I mean
What
seriously.
you know what is being followed? What the ministers say.
Yeah. I mean, there's no.
That's not policy.
There's no. Look, tax. Tax policy got several objectives. Several objectives in addition to revenue raising. I cannot, for the life of me, fathom what is meant by what is going on right now. Because if it's to promote some industry, which industry? Which industry we talking about? Because literally what the government has done is to wipe out all the tax. The tax is destroy the tax base and then now proceeding to borrow.
Mm-hmm.
That is what the government is doing.
Do you see a danger in the government borrowing policy?
A huge danger, because the government is borrowing in the typical fashion of a Ghana and Nigeria and so on, thinking that down the road they'll have sufficient revenues from the oil to pay back that borrowing. That's a dangerous thing, because everything I looked at in terms of the outlook for oil show declining prices over the long run. And of course, when you put in place things like the climate change and so on, and demand for oil and so on, you have other issues there. So to be premising your borrowing on the strength that these resources will be available down the road has already shown in a number of countries that this is a very dangerous approach. And this is what people have to know. That every time the government wakes up and says it is giving another concession, whether it's $4.8 billion worth of concessions to the private sector by changing the valuation for the purposes of tax, as they did 2 weeks ago or last week, or whether it's another $2.6 billion a couple of days ago, the government doesn't have the revenue base to accommodate these giveaways. So what they are doing is taking it from borrowings.
Mm-hmm.
And those who follow this strategy will know that in the last couple of months, the government has got at least 3 loans from World Bank and IDB that are seeking to play a role in COVID relief. So I think that is where they are going to be getting the money from to make these things, but it is borrowing. It is borrowing, and these are money that have to be paid back. People are lining up to give. It happened in my time, but I don't see anybody give me kudos for not taking the bait.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You understand? People were lining up whenever I go to IMF meeting, World Bank, with any meeting. They had all kinds of people there, Credit Suisse, you name it, running me down for meetings and telling me how much money they could lend us. 500 million here, up to 2.5 billion, and all these kinds of things. This is not free money. A lot of these monies are bullet loans. Bullet loans are loans that they may give you a 1 year, and then by the next year you have to pay it back in full. One bullet. So if you take $500 million, they don't want to know by time year 2 or 3 when you got to pay it back that the revenues that you were hoping for to come in from oil didn't come in, as happened in Nigeria, I think, and Guyana. You have to pay back one shot the $500 million.
As finance minister, did you have to confront this phenomenon by the Chinese, the Belt and Road Initiative?
It didn't come in. It didn't come in any substantial way because we had only signed Belt and Road. I think was it 2018?
Somewhere around there.
Somewhere around then. So they were exposing us to a little seminar here and a seminar there as to how it worked and so on. But we didn't actually have any projects or anything that sought to indicate that we were on this part of Belt and Road.
Does it concern you?
The Belt and Road?
Yes.
Look, every loan, whether it's coming from Western, China or whoever, is concerning, right? It all depends on what are the objectives the loan is trying to achieve, what are the terms and conditions, okay?
The objectives might vary between borrower and lender.
Correct.
The Chinese would have, well, not just Chinese, we don't want to sound anti-Chinese, but whoever the lender is would have one set of objectives.
Correct.
The borrower will have a different set of objectives.
Correct. But if these two that start out apart can come together, then it means that I have somewhere along the line flexed and they have flexed and we have been able to reach in this stage here. The problem with these loans is that they are taken for projects in a number of instances that appear to be of benefit to one person only. I mean, because I may want a train going from Latem to Georgetown. Okay, $2 billion US to build it. Okay, that's a project maybe that is
Sounds attractive
on every side thing. Okay, the issue is whether, even though I want it, whether it's a project that I wish to follow now.
And how it fits in with your priorities.
Correct. But the donor, and we don't want to say Chinese or so on, it might be important for the donor for that train to be built from Georgetown to Latem, because it now opens them access to the Brazilian border, to the Brazilian population. Okay? So you are building not for you. They're going to give you the money. They're going to be the main users of it, and you're the ones who have to pay back. You're the ones who have to pay back. Because you're not going to really be getting anything from it as such. You don't have the traffic. You don't have the goods traffic. You don't have the people traffic and so on that can utilize economically a train that's going from Latem, from Georgetown to Latem. You don't have the goods traffic and you don't have the people traffic and so on. So the people who will really benefit from that perhaps is the lender who's willing to finance it. Because the only way they're willing to finance it, knowing that it's not competitive for us, is because it's competitive for them.
What are the challenges to a finance minister in such a situation?
Well,
Everything, it looks attractive. No-brainer is the new word in economics in Guyana.
I think one of the big challenges is if you have a powerful cabinet, is to try to convince the cabinet or of nay or yea. Nay in the sense, look, we should not go
Don't
this
let me go
project.
down that road, no
this
pun
road.
intended.
No pun. Don't let me go down this road. I had these issues too, you know. And then it wasn't being Belt and Road. I had to fend off my colleagues who think I was being conservative in not entertaining overtures to lend the country $500 million and $1 billion US against future oil earnings. I had that. I had a certain ambassador come twice to my office and suggesting that the whole I'm conservative in borrowing, in my debt management and my financial management. Yes, twice came to my office. The suggestion being that individual was aware that many approaches from their country was made to me, and I seem to be rebuffing all them. You know, but look, Chris, your audience may not know, but I was integrally involved in trying to bring Guyana back in the 80s from the morass that it had found itself in. Okay?
That was with the economic recovery program.
Yes.
And the spearhead was Carl
Greenwich
Greenwich and Desmond Hoyt,
right?
Essentially.
Many people don't know. I got married in 1988. I was about to leave because the country was a little tough. My wife was a Jamaican and she was part of the diplomatic service and so on. And I brought her here to no blackout and to plenty blackout and no water and all this kind of story. And I myself was getting a bit fed up of it. But President Hoyt, who knew me well, you know, he called me and he said, listen, I heard you want to leave, but he is going to take some tough decisions in the economic sphere and he would like me to stick around.
Interesting.
Yes, and so from since then, right until I left the Ministry of Finance, I was state planning, then left ministry and came across the Ministry of Finance in 85. So when I left Ministry of Finance in 2007, I was involved in all of the structural adjustment programs. And what I saw in terms of what the pain we had to go through, the kind of debt that we had accumulated, the level of deficits that we had, the plunging of our exports, the wiping out of our reserves, and most of all, what it did to human beings.
Capital.
Human capital.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. Human beings, because
Right.
people were lining up for the most basic,
That's right.
almost prostituting themselves.
Do you know you have CEOs right now whose pensions have been wiped out because of the devaluations that
Yes, yeah.
I was saying it last night on a different program that we have middle managers and senior managers who are getting minimum pension, which is half the minimum wage. So forgive me if I appeared conservative as a finance minister, but I know when I left, this country didn't have a debt problem. It didn't have a debt problem. You check all the IMF reports and so on, they will tell you, right? We had a sustainable debt part. My budget deficits, accumulated budget deficit in 5 years was $94 billion. 1 year of a budget deficit in this country, 2020 budget, was $90 billion. This year's budget deficit is $120 billion plus another $30 billion that was taken in supplementary. And I know for a fact, because of the damage to the revenue base, that the overinflated revenues in the 2021 budget will not be met. So you may have an even wider deficit.
You describe yourself, and you said others describe you as conservative.
Yes.
In terms of economic management. Would you use that label today to your successors, both individually and collectively?
But what I'm saying is our people, given our economic history, have to be guarded. We still are operating on mono commodity type. So we've exchanged sugar now for oil. You understand? We don't know where that was. Indeed, last year when oil prices plunged so low, had we gone foolishly with the Amalia Falls based on last year's prices, we'd have had to mothball Amalia Falls. When oil prices plunged, I think, to $17 or even below that.
Yeah.
That is why it's so very important to build up a natural resource fund and have it invested for an average 3 to 5%, and then use specific amounts for targeted projects that could build the sustainability and the resilience of the economy.
Can you tell me, because I've got two questions I really want to
Sure,
ask
go
you.
ahead, go ahead.
No,
Answers.
what model was used for the Natural Resource Fund?
Look, we weren't about models. What we were was about understanding the situation in Guyana. What was the environment in Guyana? What we were trying to achieve. And then use the experiences of different countries, particularly ones that are close to our experience, like Ghana, Uganda, right? I went to Uganda to observe the model and so on, to craft our model with the assistance of the Commonwealth Secretariat and so on. So you have in place not something that is dissimilar to Norway's model. All Norway model has is, I think they have a corporation or something running theirs. But all the other stuff, they're in there. And so for me, we have the best of all worlds. The best of all worlds, because
But it's not being heavily criticized.
But no, because I'm saying, but I needed people like yourself. Look, Taran Cameron has come out two weeks ago or so.
Yes.
And he's come out in favor of it. He hasn't seen anything substantially wrong with
That's
it.
correct. I mean, quite frankly, it's hard to get a natural resource fund if you follow the basic principles.
Yes.
Intergenerational saving, avoiding the Dutch disease, ensuring absorptive capacity. But you can only have a sensible policy.
But Chris, I will tell you this, and I'm not letting any secrets out of the thing. When we invited the private sector and gave them copies of it and showed them and explained to them and so on, I remember distinctly one private sector person came out and he said, "Minister, this sounds like a good plan." He says, if the government changes, will it be changed? In other words, then, can we make this thing concrete?
Yeah.
And I was indicating to him that based on what the Attorney General's office was telling us, we couldn't put in towards changes for this and so on and so forth. But it will depend on people like them to make certain.
It could have been put into the Constitution.
Yes, the Constitution. But we couldn't go
That's
there
right.
and so on.
I want to get to this question of money laundering or the twin sides, money laundering and campaign financing. We have a chairman who is a former Court of Appeal judge. Telling me this nonsense that they have put into abeyance our campaign financing laws because it exists in our act. What challenges do those things pose for an administration?
Because I'm telling you, based on my 5 years there, I am even more convinced that we have to have campaign financing legislation.
We already have it, though, Winston. It exists and the representation of people act.
Well, then maybe.
But the chairman tells me that they've suspended it. What authority does GCOM have for suspending a law?
But maybe it needs to be reviewed, and maybe it needs to take advantage of circumstances that we have, and also best practices in other places. But what we need in place is some piece of legislation that regulates how much money is put into these elections, who is putting them, and so on. I tell you why, quickly, because my experience suggests that a whole country can be held hostage to a select group of people depending on how much money they have put into elections. And you only have to look when certain concessions are being given post-elections and contracts and so on to determine who were the major financiers and likely how much money they had put into campaign.
It's one of the worst things we have done.
Yeah, and I think quite frankly, I will put up my hand any day to back any campaign financing.
Sadly though, Minister, I think that 5 months in which between elections and the declaration only exacerbated the situation because politicians were being protected and were being financed, food, drinks, money, come with me. And it has probably scarred us for decades to come, perhaps.
Again, I won't take the negative approach to it. I am saying we could use those as experiences to really now push as hard as possible to bring these things to the front burner. Because unfortunately, if you can't get decent pieces of petroleum legislation to the front burner,
what else you can do?
but as I said, we can't give up. But it takes yourself and other members of the society. I know you've done a lot of work.
When you've been fighting, you talk about the 80s. I recall that.
I know.
Listen, unfortunately, the time has come for me to say
sorry.
Thank you so very much. It's been very enlightening for me. I hope it has been for the audience. I look forward to having you. It's always an open forum for all political parties, current politicians, former politicians, etc. But thank you very much. And operators and viewers, thank you and good night. I'll see you next week.